Well, hello. So today I talked about. Oh, hold on. Let me get some music on. I like listening to music. But I talked about filters on in regards to photography and in regards to words. So now I'm going to talk something about the past again. It's something interesting that while I was just having this conversation in my mind with this council, um, I thought, well, I'll share that. And it's funny too because I had this other vision that I had already picked the council in the future now, and that they were already there. I know that sounds kind of convoluted, but I won't say how I think that or why. Um, it's interesting because when I lived in Golden Valley, and it doesn't hurt. So I would get that out of your mind right away. It doesn't hurt Stephen anymore, and it probably doesn't hurt a lot of people. But when I was in Golden Valley, I just realized that I was actually telling my job at Fairview that I needed help. And they knew it. I was on a medical leave a couple of times for personal reasons, for drinking, and for being really confused. I told you that I was afraid to sleep in my room. And I was digging in the past so much that my mind was just going into everybody's lives. And I told you Grandma was telling me what to do. Well, not what to do, I'm not blaming her. But she was saying this, and this. And I just realized that oftentimes nurses fail themselves, fail to take care of other nurses. And that's why I'm okay with not being a nurse here. You know, in the past, would have been different if, you know, if they would have said, Stephen, we see something and we know you've been on a medical leave. Can you come in and let's talk? And I did talk to the employee assistant program, but that's because I wanted to do that. It was weird. Well, and the rest of my conversation with this council up here was pretty enlightening. And they were asking, Stephen, how did you get rid of anger? And how did you turn all this tomfoolery around on itself? And how did you see and know that the souls of the beings that look like they're in them aren't them? I don't know. But why did you agree to just go along with it? Like, well, I thought it was helpful. And I was holding on to the chance, that they could be restored to what they were. And I remember something about that quiet library, which is, I was just like, I told you. And then I remembered a story, and I'll just say it in the form of a story. It was about, say, a cosmic mother who was like very upset with one of her children, and she sent him somewhere to learn what he had done in the past. Maybe not in the past as a man or a woman, but as something else. And so I was just like, oh, that's interesting. It was enlightening. And then I saw myself speaking in this group of people, and I was going to show them this experiment. I think I'm going to still do that. I'm not going to tell you what it is, though. Or the rest of you. Or them. Or me. I also saw some other tomfoolery. And I realized that I do keep getting in their way. And that's frustrating. Well, that's because I'm no one's fool. Except my own. So, anyways. It was interesting. So, yes, things may have been different. If the bosses at the time were, or if the other nurses were more concerned with the inward collectiveness of the unit functioning. And maybe they were. They were like, well, we can't have people not showing up. But maybe if they looked inside and saw, wow, Stephen, you and Tara were working together, and she was calling you all the time, and you were semi trying to work things out, but not really, things would have been different. Maybe. Maybe things happened the way they did for a reason. But I do think that if nurses would have taken a look and said, hey, I have been in places like that myself in my life, because there were nurses who called me and said, Stephen, is there anything I can do? Do you know of any resources? And I said yes. And I was having trouble myself. And I was like, here they are. And I remember those people. Yeah. And another friend of mine, I asked an opinion once, and they said, I don't like to get involved in those kind of matters. That was a wise choice. So anyways, back to the story. So this little one, or this being, this story being, got sent to another place, away from his true home, to learn about, well, to learn about a sense of humanity. And then it wasn't always easy. And so it's just interesting. It wasn't easy. And she watched him from afar, from space, some distance, millions of miles away. And this being struggled, but always knew, in their heart that, always knew. I was telling Sean the other night, my whole life, I've heard this high-pitched ringing in my ear every once in a while, and my ear kind of perks up, and it's only in the right ear. And then I was like, I know other people hear that. It's just like, and no, I've never gotten it checked out, because I was just like, it's not bilateral. It's not in both ears. It's unilateral. And it does make my ear kind of go up, like, what's going on? Like, signal. So Something like that. I know, right? I'm trying to be serious and then I laugh and chuckle about it. Yeah, so it was interesting. And when I was like, I said that I I hope no one is trying to live my life for me because that would be impossible. They would probably go insane with the amount of stuff that's always been up there and just memories and the feelings that I have for other people. Um, so yes, and so interesting. I told you about that quiet library, and there were about 13 people there. What I didn't tell you, well, I told you that I cried, I wept publicly. What with them? There wasn't anyone else there except those World Family Organizations. But what I didn't tell you was that I was expecting Tara and Savannah and Mia to be there. It was painful. And that's why I kept walking back and across the bridge back and forth, because I thought maybe she's going to be there. But maybe she was there, because they went downstairs and they met separately. And then they came back upstairs and met as a group. And then this woman told me that I needed to, that no, it was closed now. It was a closed session. And it was funny. Not funny like haha, but it was like I still sat there. And I sat in front of the family law area, right in front of this sign that was just like, talked about family law and information about going to school there. And I thought that. And I left, and I kept walking back and forth over the bridge, and I kept seeing that sign, court, court, go to court, go to court, go to court. And I was like, oh, all right. And then I'd walk back across the bridge, and I'd be like, oh. And I met this Native American man who really kind of touched my soul. And I think, well, it could have been a council of deception, but I think I kind of like, I keep hearing that thing, well, you keep messing things up, Stephen. You know? Well, it's not that I'm messing them up. You know how I said that if somebody's hand was in the mix, it was maybe meant to be there? I don't know. I know, I'm kind of whispering. Like, so yeah. Anyways, I thought, well, wouldn't that have been fascinating if they had met with Tara and Sabea and Mia? I honestly thought that's what I was going there to see. Or that was them. And maybe I did. Maybe I did. I thought I saw one of those people from that council here. And I didn't put this on the internet anywhere, but I had seen one time when I had picked some people from different places. Getting back to the story about this being that was sent somewhere else. So fascinating. I know you can't see that. It's amazing. It's not the building that I'm looking at either. well, I'll tell you that there's 9 candle reflections in the window pane. And, well, there's only 2 this way, 9 up there. There's 3 red, on top of the building, there's 3 red lights, and then the large light reflection in the kitchen. It's fascinating. Sean always says, well, until you love me, Stephen, until you love me. And I'm like, I do love you. And people say, well, you get confused between who you and me is, or me and you, or you, me, and I. And I speak in the third person, and I take myself outside of you and me and say, Stephen, I like using my name, though. It makes it personal. It makes my life personal and meaningful. And if I have to speak in the third person to get that point across, I will. I said I was practicing for a reason, maybe. So, anyways, and then I had this thing about, what if there were more than one world, but what if there were 2 similar people that just lived separately? And maybe it was time that they came together. Some would say, well, maybe people there couldn't handle it. And some would say, well, maybe people here couldn't handle it. And I've always said, well, if I had to give somebody a choice, I would warn them. And show them that there's... Well, then we talked about these exchange student ideas and about scholarships to learning different things. And I'm just wondering about, I don't know. Well, there's got to be a reason that I have all these memories in my mind, stretching back to even before written communication, way before that. I went back there the other night. Yeah. So it's interesting, and it's not scary. And you see how I can take fear and change it? And some people say, well, it was meant to scare you and to make you angry and to elicit all these feelings in you. And I was like, but that's not Stephen. I mean, I could be. And I said that before. I could kill without it. But I mean, but I could. Isn't that weird? I don't want to. Or I don't need to. It's funny. And sometimes, and I messaged Sean earlier about, I told him, I said, Sean, enough. The council is upset with you, Sean. Not with you, Stephen, with Sean. That one. Well, he kind of agreed. I was like, oh, yeah. But guess who they always want to blame? Stephen. Not this time. I saw myself going to this certain council meeting. It was in a large group. I actually saw them in there. And I'll tell you this. If you're ever told in a room to stand up, do you stand up? Do you, if the teacher or if somebody says stand up, do you stand up? Now, do you ever stop and think, do you lift your spirit up when you do that? Or you don't even think about that, do you? You don't even think about the connection between mind and spirit. You just do what they say. Somebody says, you have to be to work at 8 o'clock today. Do you take your spirit with you, or do you just be like, oh, it's work? I used to bring my spirit with me. You know? And that's why I had compartments in my life. You know? I mean, you couldn't be a nurse all the time. And so, when I was at work, that's what I was. When I was at home. And now that I'm not a nurse, I'm just a different kind of healer. I can incorporate that into my whole life, my whole being. And that's transformative. Not in like a transformation from one being to another, because I'm going to stay Stephen Philip Lindquist, regardless of what anybody wants, or time elapsing. I said there will always be a Stephen Philip Lindquist in my family. I don't think the next ones are going to have to go through as much as Stephen Philip Lindquist this one did, but it's just, it's fun. It's fun. I find that fun. I find looking at, like what I talked about today, about filters. Oh, wait. See how different it is? I'll tell you this. One time they said I was Iberian. And then one time I told you how the migration went from Morocco to Spain, up the coast, and to the southern part of Sweden and Denmark. Well, I'm just... interesting. So we can talk about red, or white, or green, or yellow, or maps, or different kinds of images going through tunnels. I don't know. Or what's there. But you see how it changes with the filter on it? And how weird that is. And now put that with language. You know? Imagine that. I have this other experiment that I would like to do in a group of people. It's not an experiment. It's a challenge. And it's a really good one. I'll tell you. And I said, no one else is going to live my life for me. Even though I see myself talking to those people, holding up this ball of energy, just, and telling them, showing them that when they stand up for someone, they better stand up for someone with their body and spirit. Or not that that's a command, it's not. But they better think about that body, spirit, or at least attempt to think about it and be mindful of it. Interesting. So when you go to work or get on the bus, do you take your spirit with you to your work, or do you leave your spirit somewhere else? Some people might say, I leave it somewhere else where it can do good, and my work is just rote daily activity, but my spirit might be somewhere else. Then what kind of work is that? I don't know. Machines could do that. I like to put spirit into my work. Energy, love, and sometimes I put anger into my words. I did, because they're words. So, I guess if somebody asks you to stand up for them, and they leave their spirit somewhere else, or they have no spirit, then who's standing up for you? And see how we talked about these filters again? And how that looks strange. Some people might know this. Some people might just think, I've never really thought of it that way. And what if your spirit is way back there, and your physical body is here? I often wonder what I always knew my spirit was, you know. It's funny though. What would happen if the unions of spirits and body just converged in one being? I don't know. I keep seeing this image of your mother, Svea and Mia, and I was trying to. I told Sean this. I said that I'd release her soul and spirit back into her physical body before she makes the mistake of the universe. And that I guess there's no fixing it if she does. Something else will happen then. It might not be what other people think, though. It's, see how light changes things? I talked about too, like animal spirits in different worlds, in different beings. Some would say, well, Stephen, what if you went back to where you're from and they saw what you look like? Would they be accepting? I don't know. I think if you look at that on the concept of cultural diversity and the concept of accepting, Minnesota is pretty, it's been in the forefront in a lot of areas of accepting differences and welcoming people into Minnesota. You know, I mean, they're not always on top of the game on some issues, you know, but for the most part, Minnesota is like they accept people from different cultures and welcome. Minnesota welcomes diversity. I mean, I remember when the first Hmong female member, I think it was the Senate or the House, when she was elected, and I was like, right on, you know. Other people, some people didn't know who Sandra Day O'Connor was. I was like, are you serious? Oh, but then I taught her, you know, some stuff about like stuff. Um, so, anyways, interesting. Interesting about that thing about what I saw in my mind in that conversation that I had with those other people or other beings. I know you think everybody thinks you're crazy, Stephen. And I'm like, maybe my mind is a million miles away, you know? And maybe Tara did meet with that exact same council when I left. And maybe that's why I kept walking back there. Or maybe there was some other unknown reason. Either way, you see how I keep flipping it around? It makes it confusing, doesn't it? It's like, how do you keep changing people's hatred for you into something that's different? Oh, you know? Well, I could talk about that energy thing again. I could talk about energy and what's at the heart of the matter. And speak of spirit and soul energy. And then other matters. And maybe energy and spirit energy are different somehow. Maybe sometimes, like carbons and whatever. I said I don't know that much about science. I just have this idea that energy and matter exist and spirit then exists separately, or maybe at the same level, infused into it, but on different frequencies. I don't know. And maybe when they speak together, something different happens. I'm not saying anything like, do not blow up the world. That is not what I'm saying. Get that out of your mind. And retribution for crimes against one sometimes is better subtle. And on an inward self-discovery, and if that destruction has to happen on an individual level for everybody, like their belief structures need to go and they need to rebuild it, sometimes that is a good. And sometimes that happens as a collective. I don't know. I'm just throwing things out there. I know I told you that I heard those people screaming in Italian, and I was like, what are you saying? Can't understand Italian that well. And I did, like, and then I saw them in their little robes. And I was like, whoever they were yelling at, she was just like, you know? And I honestly think that Pope Francis in the Vatican, he made some changes. Well, he got that old geezer out of there. Or the church did. They were like, get to your studies and start learning some humanity for God's sake. No? But the old church needed to change. So they needed to, like, stop that old practice of just the firstborn son as a priest. Get some priests that want to be priests, that want to speak the word of, you know, let them live a little bit. Same with Buddhist monks. Can you imagine what would happen if a Buddhist monk was a firefighter and said, I ran into buildings to save people and risk my life and my spiritual life, and then came out of those buildings and said, now I want to change my life into a different practice, and I want to learn about different things, and then I want to share that with other people. See what would happen? And not that, honestly, please just, maybe those Buddhist monks were teaching those boys to be other things, to go out into community and work, and maybe they were being shepherds. Maybe they were teaching them to be other things in other locations, in other worlds or other realms of being. But it's hard if you've only been brought up in a spiritual. I'm not going to say that because I would confuse people if I said that. So, we have new neighbors. I haven't met them yet. I think they're kind of shy. I've been meeting more neighbors, and we're getting along. I like our neighbors. We're gonna have dinner up here. I'm gonna make more Indian food, something spicy, and something. I'm gonna find that. I'm gonna probably make that spinach thing again. It's so good. Why are you talking for 40 minutes? I know, right? And I went from a cosmic mother in another galaxy upset with her son. you know, a celestial being sent to Earth to, like, you know, learn, to filters on photography, to tunnels, to different perspectives, to the Vatican, to Buddhist monks, you know, sending learned little children out into this solar system. And to that place. I am not going to tell you what that experiment would be, but it's brilliant, actually, Stephen. It's brilliant. I don't think they would get it if you did it. Not right away. They would, though, eventually. And they might sit down in the audience and go, did we just learn something? And then they might go, uh-oh. Now I gotta go rethink a whole bunch of stuff that I learned. And it would have to do with everything that Stephen's learned in his life. I'm going to be respectful to the Attorney General's office and not put that videotape of the communication. I'm going to be nice about that. But you see that I do videotape it for quality assurance reasons. So I have a witness, you know, and I'm not mad about it. Not anymore. And some of them know that I'm I'm taping them. I know they do. And I think they feel ashamed. And there's no need to be ashamed. You know, I'm way beyond the hurt. Not that that's neither here nor there. So, I'm going to tell you another thing. So this candle, it's getting to the point where I have to, you know, I used to do something with the wicks, like pull them straight up like that, or I could stick something in there, or dump the wax out. I used to do that too, but that's tricky because then the well becomes too deep, and then the wax fills up more, and then the candle goes out. It's weird. Like water sometimes, or other things. It's weird. See how the light changes now? You're just moving it around. Not that I was going to show you this other experiment. I don't want children doing that experiment. It'd be interesting to do it in class, though. But I'll save that one. It's hard. Well, it's difficult for anybody to see it from where I'm sitting. Like, there's a building on this side of the window pane, and on this side, there's a reflection. Now, it looks like there's 10 candles and 3 red lights up there and 2 over there. See what I mean? And not that I'm not saying that I mean, I'm not. I see what I'm saying. Can you imagine if some being went down to Earth or was on Earth that walked into a large counsel and talked to them and said, here I am, and this is the light I'm offering. The light I'm offering you, to you all, in my hands. And then have it get bigger and say, this is my spirit. And I can show you what would they do? Would people stand up then if you said now stand up? Would they stand up with their spirit? Or would they sit down with their spirit? And say, I've been judging people. We've been judging people our whole lives. We had no idea that people walked among us with such great spirit. And then people in power would say, what can we do? I would say to them, first stand down and think about the cost of the lives you've sacrificed over the centuries for nothing. Think of all the wasted potential. I mean, human lives. And I mean, I should have to clarify this and say maybe that was their path too, so they could be reborn into something different for their development. But it then makes you think, what if nurturing and fostering and creating beauty in the world would change the world into something different? And maybe if there was beauty in the world already and people were reborn into more beautiful things, changes would happen that would really be beautiful.